Thank you, Sister Chloe, and good morning to all of you. It is truly a pleasure to be here. And first, let me just say to Chuck and to Ann, congratulations on another successful Berkeley China Summit. And I'm always thrilled to be joined by our Deputy Counsel, General Ren, and so many of our distinguished leaders, and really an honor to meet our Dean of Engineering, Dean Liu. Thank you very much. I'm really thrilled to be part of the guests here today. This is a really important gathering when you think about the context in which we are gathering, and that is, so much of what we do here on the Berkeley campus is so impactful. And it's one of the great ethics about being a part of Cal Berkeley is that I think regardless of what you're involved in, we all leave here with a sense of purpose, but also a sense of giving back. And that the world is much larger than what we're really tackling every day, but really a vision about what we can do to make it better going forward. And so we're here really to talk about the great opportunities of a stronger relationship between California and China. And I say stronger because we've had a long-standing relationship, and it's been in no small part because of so many of the leaders in this room who have facilitated that. China, the home of my ancestors, and the San Francisco Bay region, which is my current home, enjoy a relationship that dates back to the arrival of immigrants during the California Gold Rush. And I'd like to speak about immigrants because obviously that's a front and center policy issue with our country today. And I frankly don't know why it's become such a divisive issue, because I don't know that you can speak about the contributions and certainly the position of California's economy without talking about the contributions of immigrants to the state. And as I look at the successive waves of Chinese immigrants, many of them small business owners and entrepreneurs just like my parents, we've made significant contributions to the local economy. And I'm just going to give voice to this because it's a little personal to me, and it also, I believe, is a reflection of the common immigrant experience today. My parents came to this country at a very young age. They were in a prearranged marriage. My father came over when his parents basically told him there was no future for him in China to take care of his future bride and his family. And so at the young age of 14, came over to the United States and didn't have much education formally, didn't have much money, certainly did not have any proficiency with the English language. At the time that he came over, he really had three choices, and that was to begin work in the restaurant business, in the grocery business, or the laundry business. And he did apprentice in the laundry business in San Francisco, Chinatown, and eventually opened up his own laundry and dry cleaning business, which was on the west side of San Francisco for 30 years. And we sacrificed a lot. We saw them sacrifice a lot, but were able to put 6 kids through college, 5 of the 6 proud Cal alumni. So we're go Bears. And I mention this because I think for so many young people that I now have the opportunity to mentor, the road between where they are in their current studies in high school and how they see themselves in terms of being a future leader sometimes is a very daunting road, in terms of affordability of college, the accessibility of college, the ability to really have to maintain their sense of responsibility and obligations to their family while they're pursuing their studies. And so it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. But what I'm happy to say is that today, the wealth of support for our young people, particularly on this campus, is nothing short of remarkable through CAA, through many of our specific alumni chapters, but certainly through the faculty and the leaders here right here in this room. So no question, the Bay Area has also contributed to China's emergence as a global economy. Our universities and research laboratories played a role in building China's internet, reforming the legal and judicial systems, pushing towards sustainable development, and supporting entrepreneurial growth there. And they continue to drive innovation today. Emerging economies like those in Asia today are much like recovering economies such as those in the United States. We face many of the same issues and challenges, and in those parallels, I see much more room for collaboration and exchange of ideas. This university, my alma mater, is a wonderful place to have that conversation. As a child in San Francisco, I helped my parents in their laundry and dry cleaning business, translating for customers, negotiating with vendors, and filling out paperwork for the very boards of which I now am a member. The experience gave me an early understanding of hard work and a love of finance. Today, I stand here as just the 10th woman ever elected to statewide constitutional office in California's history, minding a much larger bank account. But I want to just say a word about women because obviously, and Anne, thank you for your leadership, Dean Liu. I can't tell you that the work that Chloe and I share also is we need to think about, and particularly with everything that's happened in the recent weeks with respect to the respect for women, that we need to all do our part in terms of elevating women, being sure that their voices are heard, but more importantly, that they're respected for the contributions that they make to our society and economy. So as a state controller, I am California's chief fiscal officer, and I want to just give you a snapshot of California's economy as it stands today to frame the discussion of our important economic relationship with China. Overall revenues for our fiscal year 2017-18 of $135 billion are coming in, revenues are coming in much higher than projected in our budget. And which is always great news because as someone who pays the bills for the state of California, we like to know that we don't have to do any external borrowing to achieve that. We are now more than 9 years into our economic recovery from the Great Recession, well beyond the time when we would expect to see another downturn. The average recovery usually lasts about 5 years. And when I look at the state of our economy, it really is no small fact that California led the national economic recovery out of the Great Recession. With our job creation, our job growth, and our jobs picture continues to remain strong. Our unemployment rate has stayed at a record low 4.2% for 5 consecutive months. And since the economic expansion began in February 2010, California has added just over 3 million jobs. And earlier this year, the state of California overtook the United Kingdom to become the world's 5th largest economy. So, second on our list of world economies, behind the United States of America, is my parents' home nation of China. In 2017, California, with a population of just under 40 million people, had a GDP of almost $2.75 trillion. China, with a population of almost 1.42 billion people, had a 2017 GDP of nearly $12.2 trillion. California has strength in many economic sectors, which vary by region. With geography that can take you from beach to desert to snow-capped mountains in a matter of hours, tourism is strong statewide. Science and technology are kings in the Bay Area, where our Silicon Valley is home to 40 of the Fortune 1000 companies. Biomedical technology also has taken root in the San Diego region. Los Angeles still is home of entertainment and media giants, while also serving as a major hub of international trade. And half of all U.S. trade with China goes through the Los Angeles area ports. That includes the fruits, nuts, vegetables, and dairy products produced in California's fertile Central Valley. And while California is the leading agricultural producer for the nation, China is the world's biggest agricultural economy. Approximately 10% of China's GDP comes from agriculture, compared to just 1% for the United States. And before China's economic reforms of 1978, nearly 80% of residents worked in agriculture. A third of the population still does today. Construction and industry are the other major economic drivers in China, accounting for about 44% of GDP. And as China reaches capacity internally, construction and industry are expanding their global reach. China's growth has been meteoric since it opened itself more to global markets. And according to the World Bank, 88% of Chinese citizens live in poverty as recently as 1981. But by 2012, that figure was down to 6.5%, and those were mostly Chinese residents in remote rural locations cut off from the direct results of the business boom. Here in California, we see these same disparities, but I might add, at a much heightened level. Bay Area counties enjoy full employment, while unemployment in Imperial County is over 20%, and Tulare County is second at just under 9%. California's poverty rate hit 22% by 2011. In 2016, that number had dropped appreciably to a still too high 19%. So we may be the world's 5th largest economy, and yet we are home to the highest effective rate of poverty among the 50 states. Trade between the United States and China ballooned from $4.8 billion in 1980 to nearly $636 billion in 2017. Of that most recent total, just over $130 billion were U.S. exports to China, and more than $505 billion were imports from China. In 2017, California had a total global export value of $172 trillion, including $148.5 billion from manufactured products. That represented 11.1% of all U.S. exports. California's 2017 exports to mainland China totaled just over $16.4 billion in value, trailing only those to our more immediate neighboring nations, Mexico and Canada. California export goods supported at least 684,000 jobs in the state. And our top exports to China were computers and electronic products, transportation equipment, and non-electric machinery. California exports to the greater Asian Pacific region totaled $74.1 billion, more than double our exports to the entire European Union. In 2017, more than $159 billion of the $441 billion in foreign goods that California imported came from China, more than 36%. The China of decades-old history books was a nation behind a wall, shrouded in mystery and shut off from globalization. Meanwhile, the United States was a gleaming city on a hill, home of the American dream, certainly for my parents, who looked at the United States as the land of Gimsan, the Golden Mountain. And today, the President of the United States of America talks of building new walls and denounces global cooperation before the United Nations, shouting America first, while the President of China sells the China dream. As the UCLA Anderson Forecast first joint report with Cathay Bank notes, these two policies are in direct conflict and must be resolved. Otherwise, a prolonged trade war could ensue, which would have a negative impact on both economies. China has a $337 billion trade deficit with the United States. Mexico is next at $69 billion, followed by Germany at $68 billion. With our Canadian neighbors, the United States enjoys a $3 billion trade surplus. Our trade imbalance with China is not a new issue, but this administration's approach to addressing it has been astonishing. In March of this year, a first round of U.S. tariffs were imposed on steel and aluminum imports, with additional tariffs aimed specifically at China added in July. By late September, U.S. tariffs have been imposed on $250 billion of Chinese goods, leading to a cancellation of planned trade talks and new Chinese tariffs on $60 billion of U.S. goods. Our president already has threatened to retaliate with tariffs on another $267 billion in Chinese goods. The escalation back and forth has been concerning, and particularly concerning to an economy like California's. Of these 16 instances where an emerging power challenged a reigning power, the acrimony led to outright war in 12. So it is in everyone's best interest that cooler heads and diplomacy prevail. Still, the UCLA Anderson Forecast authors express optimism, noting despite aggressive posturing, olive branches have been offered. China will showcase its growing openness to world markets at the inaugural China International Import Expo in Shanghai next month. The export fits in with China's broader Belt and Road initiative. As many of you know, Belt and Road, Yi Dai, Yi Lu, is a massive Chinese investment in connecting Asia with Africa and Europe through overland corridors and shipping lanes. Most analysts peg the Belt and Road investment at more than $1 trillion, although the actual costs and even what projects are included are not yet entirely known. China reportedly has secured more than $340 billion in construction contracts in the 71 countries comprising Belt and Road. The infrastructure initiative has been compared to the United States' equally ambitious Marshall Plan to rebuild Western Europe after World War II. Projects we know of have ranged from airports and seaports to theme parks. There are criticisms and concerns in the global community about Belt and Road, related to high-risk loans to poor countries, and also lending practices that may be questionable. In this case, when a country defaults on loan payments for a port they have constructed, as has already happened with Belt and Road in Sri Lanka, China then becomes the leaseholder. And if this happens often, China suddenly has bases throughout the world, compatible with both commercial and military purposes. The Center for Global Development already has identified 8 other countries at risk of defaulting on Belt and Road loans. Now, I'm mentioning this because this is always about critiquing major initiatives. The fact of the matter is, we've had a long history with respect to dealing with China and China with the rest of the world. And it is through the history that we have learned that great things happen when China is involved. There is no way that we can look at the lifting of any economy around the world without the involvement of China. And so I have great hope for the Belt and Road Initiative. And frankly, the negativity around this may be looking back at some of the lessons learned that did not work in the past. But the idea that we are here 40 years later and looking at the successes that we've had, I think is a testament to the fact that China will continue to prevail and that we need to do everything we can to be sure that we are part of sharing in this building of economic prosperity globally. We also know one area where California and China have quite vocally expressed our mutual commitment, despite wavering by America's national government, is climate. Climate change and the nature of the workforce are the two most urgent global economic disruptors requiring our immediate attention. Collaboration between the United States and China was crucial for moving the Paris Agreement forward. That partnership had grown immensely in the 7 years since the failed Copenhagen talks of 2009 to Paris in 2016, and it continues to this day. I recently had the opportunity to participate in our governor's Global Climate Action Summit in San Francisco, as my role as state controller, but also as a member of the two largest public pension funds in the United States, and in my role on the board of the Global Nonprofit Series, which is focused on corporate engagement to address climate risk. The Special Representative for Climate Change Affairs of China was a co-chair of that summit, where he and Governor Jerry Brown reaffirmed our shared commitment to advancing low-carbon technologies. China has a goal to go green by 2050, and that will require obtaining enough liquid natural gas to wean off of coal. And just 9 years ago, China consumed 40% of the world's coal. It is my hope that the United States will not allow trade tensions to become a stumbling block in efforts to right the course towards clean energy. I mentioned a second disruptor facing California and frankly the United States, and that is the changing nature of work itself. As employment in California's gig economy and as technology, artificial intelligence, and robotics increasingly drive productivity, we expect resulting gaps in work, wealth, and influence. To an extent, this is nothing new. Throughout time, advances in technology have led to changes in the workforce, as well as the need to retrain workers and reframe policy agendas. From knitting looms to automobile assembly lines, new technology has caused seismic shifts in the workplace. Over time, money saved through automation has ultimately led to economic expansion and job creation. However, now progress is moving faster than ever. From 1948 to 1973, U.S. productivity increased by 97%, while average hourly compensation increased rather commensurately by 91%. From 1973 to 2016, U.S. productivity increased another 74%, while compensation only went up 12%. Understandably, there is growing concern that job replacement and worker retraining may no longer keep pace with change. McKinsey Global Institute published a report that suggests that up to 30% of work done globally could be automated by 2030. In this evolution, I see opportunity to embrace the advantages of change while preparing to address the job losses that will occur. And this just begins right here, as we're sitting here on this Berkeley campus, and the importance of education in continually expanding and evolving to be flexible enough to offer pathways for training and retraining through a person's lifetime, but more importantly, to expand our global connections so that we may face these challenges together with our global neighbors. When I look at the possibility of what AI, robotics can offer to work, I think about the kinds of challenges that we have here in California, the fifth largest economy. We have a population in California that continues to age rapidly. And with our aging population, we are ill-prepared to provide the quality of care to our older adult population and to people with special needs. And I speak from this on a personal level. I am actually, with my sisters and siblings, a caregiver for my 95-year-old mother who's recovering from a viral infection, of a viral encephalitis. And when I think about the care that we've been providing to my mother, I think often about how, for our caregivers here in California, what that care could look like if they were equipped with the benefits of AI and robotics, and what that quality of care could look like, what that quality of life could look like for our older adults and for those who are ill or disabled. And when I think about that, we actually have the ability to redefine work and to redefine what equity means in terms of these changes. That when we look at these changes, that we have an opportunity to be sure that no corner of our communities of California, of China, are left behind. And that with these tools, that we can actually address issues of equity, expand economic opportunity, so that when we say economic opportunity for all, we mean it. We mean it. And when I look at what Governor Brown has done with respect to just continuing to shore up our public education system, and I'm very proud of the track record that my sister Chloe and I had in being sure that the University of California was sufficiently funded during the days that we served in those positions of decision making. We have to continue our sustained investments in our higher education institutions, if for nothing else, to just be able to have gatherings like this, where we have the minds of our future leaders here. And while I talked extensively this morning about the broken relationship currently between Washington and China, I just want to reiterate that the relationship between California and China is strong, it is robust. And when I also think about that relationship, it tells me too that the struggles that we are facing here in California will be informed by what is happening in China. That when we look at social impact, particularly when there are policies that are not helping to look at shared prosperity coming from Washington, and maybe because we are fiscally constrained in Sacramento, all social impact is local. And so we are very, very happy to see all the advances throughout China with respect to the concept of smart cities, and how we are reaching all parts of China to be sure that everyone has an opportunity and everyone shares in economic prosperity. And that is really, I think, the collective work of all of us in this room. And it doesn't matter what profession, what career path, or really what your major is. I was a sociology major, but I'm very, very clear about the fact that the economy matters, trade matters, relationships matter, and I know together with our strong relationship between California and China that we will see both of our peoples prosper. So we are inextricably linked, California and China, through our shared history. And we will continue to be linked through our strong economic ties and our commitment to addressing the very immediate threat of climate change. Our universities continue to welcome thousands of students each year from China and the Asian continent. And all of the young minds will gain the skills and knowledge to become future leaders, be it in business, technology, healthcare, engineering, education, and perhaps more importantly, most importantly, diplomacy. Diplomacy. And frankly, we can exercise diplomacy, like I said, regardless of what career path and what kind of work we are doing. And so I hope today, and I'm very happy to lend my voice of support to today's Berkeley-China Summit, but I hope today you will find many valuable ideas to foster our existing connections, but more importantly, to strengthen the ties that bind us, and to be sure that we can be a model. We can be a model of what a cooperative, robust working relationship looks like that hopefully can then be emulated by our national government and China. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to join you.